Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So journalist Michael Wolff wrote a book called Fire and Fury, analyzing or going through the first few days of the Trump administration's taking over of the White House. Now, in the same vein of the book Shattered, where they're giving you a behind-the-scenes look at the Hillary Clinton or the dysfunction that was the train wreck Hillary Clinton administration, or the administration, that's funny, the Hillary Clinton campaign. Same thing with Trump, but this time showing you a behind-the-scenes look at some of the things people were saying about Trump, some of the views that Trump had going into this. One of the main ones, that he had no belief that he was going to win this election. He thought for sure. One of the most shocked people in this in November was Donald Trump himself when they found out that he had won the election. But some of the most interesting things, or the thing that's been getting a lot of press, is Bannon. So Steve Bannon commented in the book. He made a few comments. He completely disliked Trump's family, and made some comments about Trump that Trump didn't appreciate. One of those comments had to do with the meeting in Trump Towers, calling that meeting treasonous. Let's take a look at this. This is fascinating. CNN is lavishing in this. They love this. They love it. The media has been screaming at the top of their lungs about Trump and Russia for over a year now, and they've had bupkis to show for it. So having somebody on Trump's side saying, hey, that meeting was treasonous, it wasn't against the law. No laws were broken. They've made no connection between Trump and Russia at all. And they're lavishing on this meeting because they don't have anything else. They're going to stick with this idea of what Bannon said, again, because they don't have anything else, if that makes sense. It's like the shallowness of the case is kind of revealed just on the things that they themselves are focusing on. In this case, they're focusing on a conversation that took place that everybody already knew about. But the emphasis is on what Bannon thought about it. The media usually give two shits about what Bannon has to say, but in this case, purely because Bannon was on the inside working with Donald Trump at one point, now they look at whatever he's saying as being the word of God, and that's, you know, it's like Bannon said it was treasonous, so that's exactly what it is. Let's take a look at CNN. They're bathing in this. They love it. They absolutely love it.
Is the very much associated with Breitbart and the conservative, media movement. He sounds today like he's from MSNBC. He's now sort of taking the other side. The backdrop to this is that while they were all in the White House, Bannon hated the Trump relatives. He hated Kushner. He hated Trump Jr. He
get him out.
So there is a real axe to grind here. Treason has a very specific legal definition, and I don't think there is anything.
He's pointing to a crime,
right? Yeah, I don't think if there was any crime, I don't think it was treason, which has a sort of military component. But it certainly, I think, clearly was inappropriate. And whether it was part of a conspiracy to violate campaign finance laws or aiding and abetting hacking, these are the legal crimes that I think Mueller will be examining.
By the way, I find this conversation and the things that these guys are saying amazing. So when Donald Trump said that his phone was tapped, that Obama administration tapped his phone, that turned out to be true. Now, he used the term tap, and everybody jumped on that word tap as if Donald Trump was being specific. Well, he wasn't being specific. Well, he was talking about, look, I think these guys are looking at my contents, the conversations that we're having. And he turned out to be right. Now, whether he knew that at the time was kind of besides the point. He turned out to be right. But he didn't mean the term tapped in the way that people have this kind of wire like they did in the 40s or the 50s. When Bannon is saying treason, I suspect this is somewhat of the same thing. Bannon is not talking about the legal definition of treason. Bannon is making this point that these guys are interacting with a foreign government to get information on their opponent. So, again, I don't think Bannon is going for a legal definition in the same way I don't think Trump went for a legal definition. We were talking about his phone was being tapped. You can say that it is somewhat inappropriate for a candidate to go to a foreign government in order to pull information on their opponents. Yes, but come on, let's be honest. This has taken place over several years. Ronald Reagan trying to keep the Iranians, holding those hostages a little bit longer because it allowed his chances to be better with Jimmy Carter. Richard Nixon keeping the war in Vietnam going, pushing to keep that war going because he had a better chance of winning the presidency by screaming that he had a secret plan to get us out of the war. This is not unheard of. The point I want to make here, though, is the conversations that took place with Trump or with Trump associates in those towers were already known. This is not new information. All of this purely boils down to the media fetishizing what Bannon has to say about this, Bannon calling it treasonous. Let's keep going. The whole campaign finance thing also. The piece in Politico clearly got across that Hillary Clinton was skirting campaign finance laws. I hate to bring this up, but I bring this up because this guy is making this case of, hey, Mueller's looking into these idea of crimes. And one of the crimes that he mentioned was breaking campaign finance laws. And you have a piece in Politico, you have Donald Brazil, all of this stuff being very well known. The campaign finance laws was being broken. They were literally skirting campaign finance laws with all of this money going or ending up in New York. It rings a little hollow that the focus that you, or one of the items that you bring up is campaign finance laws. That's all. I find it to be amazing that this is brought up with no context associated with it at all, as if Donald Trump is the only one breaking or skirting campaign finance laws. He is not. He is not. The information that you're looking for is already available to the public, but it's for the other candidate or the person he was running against. Let's keep going.
Clearly, Bannon thinks there is perhaps financial crimes.
When Bannon says here, I think it's so interesting at the end of the quote that he gave to Michael Wolff here that he should have told, somebody should have told the FBI. Mm-hmm. I do think that is a question that continues to hang over what Paul Manafort and Donald Trump Jr. and Jared Kushner were thinking. We just learned that the Australians, when they learned of some information, picked up the phone and made a call to American authorities about it. So
the thing is, this gets us no closer to the Russiagate thing. They're fetishizing this information, but ultimately this information was already known. All of the story, the entirety of the story, is boiled down to what Bannon thinks. That's it. They're bathing in this. So Donald Trump had comments. Of course, Donald Trump had comments in the way that Donald Trump typically has comments. Just kind of brutish. You know, this is exactly what I think in the most brutal terms that I can get across. There's even almost an art to it, in the same way that there's, you know, art to violence. You can have this kind of artistic violence on screen. I would say that Donald Trump's tweets and his comments come across in the same way when he's cutting people down. It is some of the funniest shit you would ever hear in your life. This is the Washington Post with Donald Trump not liking some of the things that Bannon said about him. Here's the thing, though. You may call Bannon a white supremacist. You may call the guy a racist. You may call the guy all sorts of names. Bannon is often right. He's often right. His political analysis, when you're looking at just basic political analysis from a right-wing perspective, oftentimes the things that Bannon said was right, and in this case he's right again. It was stupid to have that meeting, particularly when you're having your close associates having a meeting in that way. Regardless of whether or not you got information from that meeting, it looks bad. It looks bad. It's been hanging over your head. Bannon kind of made this point, like, if you're going to have a meeting like that, you should not have your main people have that meeting. You need to have underlings and lawyers to make sure that you're airtight in regards to the way you go about your affairs. He called it stupid, and Bannon is right to call this stupid, somewhat of a level of incompetence. That's the Washington Post. I like Trump's response to this, even though I like Trump's response to this. Trump's responses are breathtaking. In a few ways. He doesn't necessarily let something that he said maybe a week ago or a few days ago or a few hours ago get in the way of what he's saying at that very specific moment. So before he might have said, oh, Bannon, this is my right-hand guy, but now Bannon is trash. Let's take a look at what he said in Washington Post. Trump slams Bannon. When he was fired, he not only lost his job, he lost his mind. President Trump on Wednesday castigated his former chief strategist, Steve Bannon, as a self-aggrandizing political charlatan who has lost his mind, marking an abrupt and furious rupture with a one-time confidant that could have lasting political impact on November midterms and beyond. The White House sharp public break with Bannon, which came in response to unflattering comments Bannon made about Trump and his family in a new book about his presidency, left the self-fashioned populist alienated from his chief patron and even more isolated in his attempts to remake the Republican Party by backing insurgent candidates. And by the way, Trump sent, well, I'll just read it. Late Wednesday, lawyers for Trump sent a cease and desist letter to Bannon, arguing he violated the employment agreement he signed with the Trump Organization in numerous ways and also likely defamed the president. They ordered that he stop communicating either confidentially and or disparaging information and preserve all records in preparation for an imminent legal action. Essentially, Donald Trump is like, I don't like what you said about me. You called us incompetent. I don't like the fact that you called us incompetent. And there's going to be legal ramifications for you talking behind our back. Let's see. In a lengthy statement issued this afternoon, Trump blamed Bannon, his former campaign manager and chief strategist, who now head the conservative Breitbart News website, for everything from leaks to the new media that upset to the news media, to the upset GOP loss in last month's Senate race in Alabama. The president cast Bannon as a disgruntled former staffer whose chief goal was to stir up trouble. Steve Bannon has nothing to do with me or my president, the statement said. When he was fired, he not only lost his job, he lost his mind. The White House also released a statement from the First Lady's office condemning the forthcoming book, Fire and Fury, Inside the Trump White House by Michael Wolff, as the title, to be found in the bargain fiction bin, while the Republican National Committee said Wolff has a long history of making stuff up. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, meanwhile, devoted much of her Wednesday news briefing Wednesday to disputing Wolff's claims and seeking to undermine Bannon's credibility. Whatever is going to come out in this book, they're apparently concerned about it. And in the way that the media is fetishizing the stuff that Bannon is saying, you can imagine that if stuff comes out that's a little bit more damning, they're going to do the same thing. They're bathing in this. They're absolutely bathing in this. I wasn't aware that Bannon was looked at so highly by the media. Now, some of this, yes, boils down to this guy was close to Trump. The media is antagonistic towards Trump, so any club that they can find, particularly a club that was once Trump's friend, they're going to use it. It's like Republicans finding, any darky to support their cause. It's like, hey, this black guy says you people are lazy. So yeah, this black guy saying it, so it has to be true. In this case, they found somebody who was in Trump's circle who's now bashing Donald Trump and bashing, I guess, the incompetence that was associated with his campaign. So yeah, they're going to fetishize it. No, this has nothing to do with Russia. No, they have no information in regards to Russiagate or anything else. Yes, they've spent over a year screaming about Russiagate with no information. And so yes, even though we have no new information, they are going to bathe in this story like nobody's business. So I'm looking forward to the book. I think the book is going to be fascinating. Shattered was fucking amazing. I would say anybody who's interested in seeing what took place in the Hillary Clinton campaign, including the advent or the inception of this whole Russia nonsense, I would say check out the book Shattered. Until then, Fire and Fury, Competence of the Donald Trump administration. So I'm looking forward to that book being released. There's other stories on this also. This thing of Trump not believing he was going to win, Trump being shocked as shit when he won the presidency, all sorts of interesting stories and tidbits and stuff. So at the very least, there is a war on the right dealing with this idea of what Bannon wants the party to be versus what the Trump administration, I guess, wants the party to be. And in that difference, you have conflict, and that conflict is something that the media loves, particularly when it's involving Donald Trump. Whether it's an empty podium, or whether it's Steve Bannon having to go at him, or whether it's Russiagate nonsense, if Donald Trump is a part of it, they love the story. It puts asses in seats, so they go with it. So I will leave this here. Bannon feuding with Trump. And one last thing, Donald Trump doesn't know if all those leaks and everything else was related to Bannon. He's just adding the shit into it now because Bannon released some of that stuff in the book itself. There's no way for him to know that Bannon was the leaks. This is stuff he's just piling on. At least I think so. I think he's piling the stuff on. because he's mad at Bannon now because Bannon was giving out too much information. So I will leave it here. And the book again is called Fire and Fury by Richard Wolff. So, all right, guys. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, guys.